Pawanji, happy spring and welcome to the new beginning of the seasons here. And obviously, we are together here again after a long time, after a long break to study the Shri Hanuman Chalisa from the book Living Hanuman, which is written by Pawanji. And today we are taking up the verse 9 and the verse 10 because they are quite interconnected. So, like always, I'm just going to slowly browse through the verses and then we would love your input on it. So I'll begin with verse 9, and that is sūkṣma dhari siyahiṁ dikhāvā, bikat dhari laṅka jarāvā. And the meaning of that is assuming a subtle form, stepped in front of Sita, assuming a fierce form, burned the city of Laṅka. And I will take the next verse, which is bhīma dhari asura saṅhāre, rāmacandra kāja saṅvāre. Assuming an awesome form, destroyed all the demon, accomplishing with aplomb Rama's important mission. And there's a beautiful endpoint you take after each verse. For the previous one, which is that I am aware of my sūkṣma breath flowing through the septum of my nose until the third eye center. And then for verse 10, which is the bhīma one, I am aware of my bhīma form, my own gathered and concentrated strength. So I think in this verse, we are talking a lot about the various versions that Shri Hanumanji can take up as a being. And I would love your viewpoint on this one because it is quite intense. When I read the chapter, I saw that you have covered various religions and various branches of science, the nervous system, the respiratory system, and how they all connect, scientifically to something that is like a religious scripture that has been with us for a long time. So please.
Fantastic. Thank you for the introduction. So the simple verse is sūkṣma dhari siyahiṁ dikhāvā, bikat dhari laṅka jarāvā, bhīma dhari asura saṅhāre, rāmacandra kāja saṅvāre. Two verses together. Simple meaning is assuming a very subtle form, assuming a tender form, you presented yourself in front of Sita ji. Assuming a fierce form, you burnt down the city of Laṅka, and assuming a very large form, a gigantic form, you annihilated the demons, and thus you accomplished the mission of Rama. The mission of Rama was ultimately to rescue Sita and demolish or annihilate the demons and demolish the city of Laṅka. This whole two verses sound quite violent if you look at it in one way, in the way of the narrative. But it is not violent, it is only transforming the intensity and nature and presentation of force of one's energy. And here, the energy being described here is one's presence itself, the way one presents oneself. The word rūpa, which is used here, rūpa, means form. You used a very good word for it. You called it version. Version is also right. One can say one's version. So here we see Hanumanji's various versions. I will pause here a bit and take a very small detour. We have done verses 8 and the 2 introductory dohas. You will find that in the previous 8 verses, this whole of Hanuman Chalisa is like a curriculum vitae of Hanumanji. The first 8 verses represent all his qualities and qualifications. It is very interesting. All his qualities, his name, his father's name, his mother's name, as we write a CV, all his qualifications and qualities. He is knowledgeable, ocean of knowledge, this, that, everything. And now, from verse 9 onwards, his accomplishments, his experience, when we say in a CV, past experience or work experience, here, from here on, we read about his work experience. So one of his first work experiences begins with this one, that he presented himself in front of Sita ji. Now, those who are aware of the Ramayana story know that Sita ji was abducted by Ravana and she was kept in captivity. And Hanumanji was the emissary of Rama who went looking for her and finally found her in Laṅka. And when he saw her to be a very beautiful, very tender woman sitting and sobbing under a tree. So he thought, if I were to present myself the way I am, a large, fierce monkey, it will scare a woman. She won't come near me. She'll just go the other way around. She'll scream and everybody will come. And then they will inquire, who is he? So he assumed a very subtle form. Here, subtle means both. Subtle means a small or a tiny form that also can be said to be subtle. But in this particular verse, the word is sūkṣma. Sūkṣma also means to assume a form which is so translucent, like an apparition. Such a subtle light that only that person will see you who you will to be shown yourself to. Others won't see you. Even if others see you, they will be blinded to your presence. Somewhat like love sometimes, in a crowd, people see you only as a woman or as a man. You are just like anybody to everybody else. But to one person, you are his world walking towards you. You see that in movies, but not only in movies, but in real life also. When a beloved or a very dear relative or someone whom you deeply love is walking towards you, the joy and ecstasy, and it is only his eyes, recognizes that subtlety of your presence in that particular role towards that person. So that is subtlety here. Otherwise also, an allusion is made towards Chaya Purusha, the shadow person. There is a practice within our tradition, within our Vedic Tantric tradition, in which we learn to create our own shadow presence. There is a method. And then you infuse that shadow presence with all the qualities that you have. And you can send this shadow person to accomplish certain things where you cannot grossly reach. Your shadow presence can reach there. And many on this path experience the shadow presence of their gurus, of their masters, of their deities. Suddenly you get a goosebump. I'm just getting a goosebump just now, as if someone is present, as if someone has arrived. But it is impossible to explain it to anyone. It is experiential. So it is also possible that Hanumanji presented himself as Chaya Purusha, as a subtle form. Another way to understand it is, which I have mentioned in the book, sūkṣma represents sūkṣmana also. So we have the two flow of breath, the sun and the solar and the lunar breath. And in between both of them, there is a subtle channel that flows through the septum. Now the septum of the nose looks to be blocked, but through the septum, there is a subtle channel that goes up to the pituitary, in the region of the pituitary. And then thereafter follows is the central channel between both the intertwined lunar and solar channels of energy that pervade our body. So in that, along the spine and also in our body, it is only when the practice of sūkṣmana is mastered that you begin to communicate with the Sita, which has been abducted and kept within yourself. There is a Sita self. There is a giver self. There is love herself, which has been taken away, which has been abducted and kept aside. And we are unable to see her unless and until we travel through the sūkṣmana path or present ourselves in the sūkṣmana form to our own selves. Again, it's a bit of a looped thinking. Coming back to the Chalisa, sūkṣma rūpa dhari siyahiṁ dikhāvā. So Sita ji, who was abducted and kept here, Hanumanji presented himself in subtle form. So this is one form. In another form, in a fierce form, he took a very fierce form, bikat rūpa, fearful form. He burnt down the city of Laṅka. Now, if you look at it purely from a physical, as a physical event, as if somebody has taken a torch and burned down a city, it looks like a very destructive and a very violent act. But that is not so. Laṅka, city of Laṅka, represents a collective sense of accumulation, a collective greed which takes away, which sucks away all the resources and concentrates within the hands of the few. Not to sound anyway political or anything like that, but these days we say the method of capitalism promotes that. Somehow, if somebody can be smarter with money and who understands the game better, can amass millions and millions of dollars sitting in a corner and just working on laptop, exchanging some finances here and there, they make millions and millions and millions of dollars. While there are people who are really digging the soil and growing crops and putting food on our table, and they get peanuts because they can't. So wealth gets concentrated and deprives the rest of that luxury and abundance. So this particular notion of gathering, of collecting, of hoarding, and then building a city of that, that city exists even in our own minds. And we brick by brick keep building that city as we keep adding an expensive watch or an expensive garment or even an expensive chocolate. These days, you go to the marketplace and you find chocolates worth 50 pounds or something like that, just one chocolate like that. And 50 pounds could bring in a ration for a whole week if it is spent very well. So that consumption is burned. Burning here in the, always remember that we are reading a spiritual text and it is metaphorical. So burning here, fire represents the fire of knowledge, the light and the heat that is produced out of knowledge and its practice. The light produced out of knowledge, the light is produced out of knowledge, out of knowing, out of understanding, and heat is produced out of its application, out of its practice. Such fire, which is also known as tapo agni, the fire of tapas, with that fire, this attitude of consumption is burnt down, but it has to be burnt down very firmly. Next time your mind says, let me spend so many thousand on something, you have to firmly put it down. You say, no, I won't go that route. I will make a better use of this £1,000. But it is not also about denial. In practical life, you can spend £1,000 on whatever you wanted, but maybe keep 10% apart and spend another £100 for doing something for someone who needs it. Then also you can say that it was at least some amount of equitable distribution happened, even if it was not equal distribution. So, sūkṣma rūpa dhari siyahiṁ dikhāvā, bikat rūpa dhari laṅka jarāvā, bhīma rūpa dhari asura saṅhāre. Bhīma means fur, and asura are those who live in the city of Laṅka. Asura are those thoughts. So Laṅka is the mind space which is constructed out of the sentiment of grabbing, and the thoughts that live in that, they are asuras, the disharmonious asuras who only know how to eat and feed themselves. Asuras are shown traditionally, like any demons in any culture, they would be shown with large teeth, big tongue sticking out, big eyes like that, even maybe a horn. These are all symbols of aggression, of consumption. They want to eat a lot, they want to consume. They are very strong. They build big muscles so that they can vanquish. Of what use is big muscles? Tell me. Big muscles are used only to vanquish somebody, to threaten someone. So they use the power of fear, of force, of threatening, of consumption. This attitude, these thought bubbles or these thought beings that dwell in the city of Laṅka, they are saṅhāre. Saṅhāre means killed, but killed not in the sense of murdering with us, stabbing them, but in the sense of transforming them. Transforming them. There is a subtle hint that all asuras who were killed in the battle of Ramayana all landed up in Vaikuntha. They all went to Vaikuntha. They didn't go to hell. So that means that killing was an act of transformation. It was not that they were bad guys, they have to be killed and sent to hell to burn forever. No. Here, killing is a metaphor for transformation. They were transformed into beings who will now be the citizens. From being the citizens of Laṅka, they become the citizens of Vaikuntha. Laṅka, a city of consumption. Vaikuntha, kuntha means something which is fastened, something which is knotted. Vaikuntha, something which is unknotted. So you can say Laṅka is a city of knots, tights here. Vaikuntha, a city of freedom, total liberation. Vaikuntha means liberation, a space or a realm where you're totally free and you flow like a breeze. So this immigration happens from Laṅka to Vaikuntha. And Rāmacandra ke kāja saṅvāre. So here, Rāmacandra ke kāja saṅvāre, and therefore there is a very, very big, this just means the mission of Rama was accomplished, and therefore in India these days it is even more popular. There is a chant that goes around, Jai Shri Ram, they say. They have made it like a war cry. Now, okay, at one level, it's a war cry for people believing in a particular religion, in a particular form of God. But actually, Jaya Shri Ram. Jaya means pervading, something that has won over, something which is predominant, the dominant something. Jaya means to dominate. Shri means abundance, goodness, well-being, welfare. All of this can be clubbed under Shri. And Rama means pervasive. So that abundance which is shared, which is pervasive, may this be the abundant state, this be the dominant state of the society. Today, the dominant state of society is concentration of wealth in the hands of few and suffering of poverty of the many. This is the dominant state of our society, of our world today. Jai Shri Ram means may shared abundance prevail. May shared abundance prevail. That is the mission of Rama, which got accomplished through Hanumanji.
Wow, like it's a little eye-opening in terms of how you present the word Jai Shri Ram, because often when something gets accomplished for me, I just go like Jai Shri Ram or Jai Mata Di. It just comes so naturally to us. But obviously it's a very different vision to the way you speak about shared abundance. And absolutely, I fully agree with you in terms of the word concentration of whether it's power, wealth, or your resources. Your viewpoint is kind of eye-opening towards the way you associate something that is metaphysical, like in honesty, scriptures for us, the meaning of that is such a metaphysical thing. However, in physical dimension, at some point in time, it has happened. And now we have related it with science, with our politics, with our everyday life, and how we kind of absorb the information from it to apply it in our lives. So I would just like to take, probably the chapters are very intense because I read them before our session. And I love the way you have associated, even in the other verses, Sita Ma, you have associated her with saying Siya or Sita as a metaphor for the primordial earth. And then you talk about the unison between Sri Ram and Sita, which is like the cosmic creation is happening in that moment. That is something that I personally loved a lot. Then I did read the part where you have actually given in detail the story of how Sita Ma gets abducted. And in that, you associate it with the various emotions she experiences as a person, and how in that one split moment of unconscious act where you are driven by either fear or anxiety, you speak about the nervous system, how the amygdala, I hope I'm saying it correctly, how that gets hijacked, and then how you have associated it so beautifully with our personal lives every day, where we get kind of absorbed by advertising, by media, and how we are kind of driven towards I will not say mindless goals, but just kind of goals which have no fruition. They are not leading to something very constructive. And you speak about that amygdala hijack. And then in the question, which I did the question, but obviously I would love your viewpoint on it. You say that what learning and practice must I undertake to prevent my amygdala hijack? And I thought quite deeply about it. I mean, being content and being kind of conscious of every small thing that you have and being grateful for it, and then also ensuring that that particular thing is kind of present for others, and telling yourself not to be over greedy about something and trying to hoard it. Like you used all these words when you were describing this verse to us. What practice do you personally practice for not letting your amygdala get hijacked?
I personally practice breath awareness, and I think that is the most important line. If you can imagine breath to be the Lakshman Rekha, the line which is drawn around your emotions, and you don't cross it. That means you don't do something without pausing and becoming aware of your breath. Awareness of breath will prevent amygdala hijack, because the moment you become breath aware, your parasympathetic nervous system kicks in, and and those seconds of amygdala hijack doesn't happen. But I will not be dishonest. My amygdala also gets hijacked. It is such a subtle act of the moment, wherein one moment of lapse and your mind is gone. It happens mostly when you're looking at an advertisement and it says buy now, and it flashes there like that. So even before you think, you just click it and you have your credit card already built into the mobile phone, and immediately say $10 or $20 or $50 are gone to buy a book or buy a gadget or a stand for a round bulb or anything like that. And it's just gone. And it might have been necessary or not necessary, but you realize later that you could have done without it. It was not, you need not have allowed that hijack. This is more on the humorous side. On the other side, our amygdalas get hijacked in personal relationships. When somebody is keying us up, and then one thing and the other, and by this time there is a split second and you burst out, or you say something, or you give it back. Well, one practice is that every time I do that, I go back and apologize immediately, because you realize about your hijack only in 30 seconds. In 2 minutes, you know that you went off. So the first thing first, go and apologize for whatever you did in those 2 minutes. You said something, you had a behavior, you banged the door or did something. Normally what happens, what people do is, once the hijack has taken place, and they come back to their senses, they know they have done something wrong, and yet they stick their guns to that. They would still want to justify what they did or said was just okay. They won't go back. I think that is the first step that we should practice. That yes, we recognize that our minds can be hijacked. It's a subliminal function. It's the amygdala, it is situated at the brainstem. Sometimes you don't have conscious control on it in that moment. It goes like that. But the moment it goes like that, and we come to that realization that we circle back and do the first correction, which is apologize or become totally aware and get centered of what has just happened. Doing this repeatedly over a period of time leads to a space wherein such hijacks don't happen.
I mean, it has taken me a while. I used to be a very impatient person. And on a very practical note, it takes a lot of conscious awareness to not retaliate, to not speak out, or not aggressively pursue in that aggressive moment, to kind of act as a neutralizer towards yourself and your brain and all the systems in the body, because not only does the nervous system, your hormones, they spike up and the stress levels go up. So you kind of engage in very conscious awareness that you choose to let it come to a center point and then act from a space towards anything, like towards life, towards relationships, towards learning, towards products, from a space of awareness instead of just want, the greed part. And I know we have taken a lot of time, so we will just, I like the way you've associated the my action point, which is the key takeaway point for any individual who reads this. And in the verse 9, it is to approach my weakness with firm resolve. Like you said, that when you establish that your amygdala has been hijacked, to come back and have a firm resolve with an action plan towards it and keep your resolve towards it. That's really something that I appreciate. I will practice it myself. I do, but we all kind of lose that. There are very, very brief moments when you lose it. And then the my action point for the bhīma, rūpa, dhari, asura, saṅhāre is to engage in a life project which is larger than myself. I think when we start looking at us as a collective consciousness, when we start being considerate of others, not only just the others who are closer to us, but others as everyone who lives in a society, in a setup, like you said, shared abundance. I think my takeaway from this whole session of us is how to consciously engage in creating abundance that is shared and not that is concentrated. So that is something that I have learned. And there is a lot of information you have given in this one, which we haven't been able to take because we have time constraints. But definitely I would request everyone to kind of read through the vision you have given in the verse 9 about how we kind of get drawn with the society in the herd mentality. We get there, and how you have to keep calling yourself back to yourself often to recognize that you have to be breath aware. And that all connects to simply the initial verses of how we are learning that Shri Hanumanji is like just the breath, just the awareness of it. So thank you so much for this, beautiful session where even though I do it with you, but I read it and every time it's eye-opening. And I'm sure those who kind of go through these verses step by step, they will realize that how subtly it connects to everything in our life. Thank you so much. Take care and see you soon.